Hi, everyone. So, today I really wanted to walk through a trip I was able to take recently up to our Club Dark site in Oklahoma. And this is for the Texas Astronomical Society. That's when I say the club, that's my club. And I wanted to highlight a few things. One, I had a great time, even though it was only an overnight trip. Getting out to dark skies isn't something that I get to do very often with my work schedule and kind of family life and all that kind of good stuff. But I really did like getting out there for a few reasons. The first and foremost, to get that good sky, but also there were a lot of other club members out there that day, and I really enjoyed getting to spend time with them, look at their stuff, and kind of get a good idea of how everyone else is doing this thing. And it's just fun to be around folks that are doing the same thing as you in this hobby. Is a lot of times you spend that time alone. So one of the things though with me is I said I don't have a lot of time to get out there. So I wanted to go out with a plan of what I could do to make sure that I would always have some sort of quality images coming back, right? You can't always control the weather, but the weather being, a kind of set factor, what can I do to make sure that I come back with stuff that I still think I had a good time with? So for me to start off with is I took just my normal camera with me. Now, in this case, I say normal, but it's a modified DSLR that I just put a filter in front of to take daytime shots. And that let me go around and have some fun with things. So I was able to go around and look at the gear of some of our other members, in some cases kind of drooling over what they have. This one here, we're looking at, an Astrophysics Mach 1. I certainly can't fully afford that mount. But at the same point in time, he's running a C8 on there, which is one of the scopes that I have. So it's kind of nice to see that. He's running a Polemaster too. He's got a lot more counterweight to bring around. Overall, this is more equipment than I really want on a single setup, but it was really neat to see how his was set up. With one of our other members, she had a Celestron. I think this is the CGM DX or something like that. And while she had her Explore Scientific, I think this was a 127 millimeter on here. She was actually imaging out of, I believe this was a 70 millimeter scope here, and her DSLR on it with the little guide camera and scope on top. So she's running a 3-scope setup on a single thing, and it's kind of fun to see how they set things up. And I would have been lost without her if it weren't for the fact that they brought an actual mini hairdryer with them, which allowed me to really keep the dew off of one of my setups later on in the evening. So for my gear, I brought out the same equipment that you've seen on the channel here for the most part. Brought out Hero, my Takahashi FSQ 106 on the Ioptron CM60 mount, and just kind of my normal setup that I would use in the backyard here. But as I mentioned before, I really wanted to kind of make sure that I was going to get at least something that I like. So, I thought, well, if I'm going to come out here, I may as well take images with more than one thing if I can make it work. So I had my normal backyard setup that I was bringing with me, but I also brought just a nice tripod and a small sky tracker. This is the Star Adventurer from Skywatcher. I just recently got it, and it's got a little ball head mount on it that I could put my DSLR on. So, really it just allowed me to start taking images with both the DSLR camera in a very simple, super wide way, as well as images with the main telescope. So, as we went through here, I started taking off my filter. So you can see this is what that Astro modified camera kind of looks like once you take off that daylight filter. And just kind of, had some fun looking around and then waiting for the stars to come up. Now, I'm tabbing through these here, and I'm not going to go through every single one. But one of the things I wanted to show here is that, when you go out in these locations, you really just want to start taking a lot of shots. In some cases, you'll have a very defined plan, and I did for the main telescope itself. But I didn't really have much of a plan when I started going through here for the DSLR. And you can see, my exposure levels change and things like that. All of a sudden, I start getting these bright rings around stuff. This is when the dew started showing up. I was wondering if I was getting flying saucers in there, but it was really the lens was starting to dew up. I think I caught an iridium flare there. And, so you go, uh-oh, I've got a dew problem. What am I going to do? You break out the hair dryer. And then it was really cool to start seeing, the Milky Way start to come up. And, in this case, I'm not thinking of this as, oh, this is a final. This is a picture that I'm really going to deal with as a final. This is more kind of letting me see more than I would be able to see with my eyes. And by the way, you'll see in most of these super bright, right in the center is Jupiter, actually casts even a little bit of a lens flare on here. And that kind of made it fun to, and it gave me something nice to be able to center on. But you see a lot of these aren't in focus yet. I'm still kind of playing around with how to get the camera working just right. My color balance goes way off, which is fine. In this case, I think I even had the little lens hood was askew. And that's fine. One of the nice things with color balance when you're shooting with a DSLR is that you can always come in and adjust the white balance after the fact to something that's a little bit more realistic, and it's really not that difficult to do. And even if you're bringing this into Photoshop or something like that, you can always adjust that afterwards. And I'm not going to go through these all individually. It's really just to illustrate. I brought a couple of different lenses with me. I believe this was the 50 millimeter lens, and just start shooting at different things here. These have all been adjusted already. I noticed I had some issues with darks and some things like that on learning the camera to fix. And so a lot of these just got thrown away at the end of the day. But it did help me learn a lot, and it was a lot of fun to kind of take some of those pictures as I went through there. And then I kind of went back to looking at the galaxy itself as it went through, and these are going to buzz by pretty quick here, and just kind of taking a bunch of different shots of the Milky Way as it was going through, and nothing with a super particular thing in mind, because this is kind of my first time out, other than I knew I wanted to get good shots of the galaxy. So I tried a lot where I wasn't framing it against the sky with one lens, or framing it against like the trees. Others where I was trying to get different cars and things in the foreground to give a little bit more depth to it. And then at one point in the evening I decided, I also want to do kind of a time-lapse star trail thing. So I just set up the camera and turned on the shutter release just like I would in the backyard and let it run. And when I hold this down, you can kind of see it move a little bit for a minute here. The little black lines that come through are where I was painting out after the fact to try to get everything working better, to get the airplane streaks and stuff out of there, just like I did in the backyard. And while that's going on, I go back to my main scope and I'm messing with that to see what I can do. And then just took my camera around after that and took a bunch of other little pictures here and there. And so what did I end up with between that whole trip? This is 342, and this is mainly the stuff coming off of the Canon camera, and I threw almost all of it out, other than a lot of the Star Trail things, and just picked individual ones to work with at the end of the day there. So what did I really end up with? Well, to start off with, I took this picture over the little observatory dome that we have there. I shouldn't say little; it's a lot bigger than anything I've got. And this is in black and white. This is for a few different reasons. One, I like the black and white. I think it looks really good. Two, I'm still having a hard time figuring out how to do the colors on this camera. I was getting a lot of green down here. I really didn't want to spend days and days and days messing with it. I really just wanted to get an image that I felt good about. And putting it to black and white really let me enjoy it. And so once I got to that point where I'm like, I enjoy this one, I still have the color versions of this sitting in Lightroom. I can go back and mess with them if I wanted to, but I really like this one as is. So, so I decided to kind of call it quits on that one there. And this is more I want to get framing, right? I want a picture that says something to me. The observatory with the Milky Way coming right out over top. I like that just from an artistic perspective. Then next, I took one of the photos that I had that was, kind of the field overall with the Milky Way on top of it, and kind of tried to pretty up that as much as I could. Once again, I think on almost all of these, I had a darks problem due to some infrared stuff inside the camera that I've since figured out how to fix. But overall, I was like, okay, yeah, I came up with something that once again I think is really pretty and has a lot of good color to it. Nothing to super write home about, but a nice kind of memento of the evening. And then this one was really kind of a combination of framing and a lucky shot. I was trying to get the Milky Way up and down. At the same point in time, one of the other club members was packing their car up for the evening, and it just all kind of aligned right, to where I could get kind of this whole nice stream right down to the car. And I just love this framing. You can tell this is where I'm talking about kind of some of the colors issues. These are things that I think I could play around with and we'll get better with over time. But for right now, I feel like, okay, I really like this shot because even if it's not perfect, it tells a good story for me. And then lastly, this is that Star Trail shot. So this one, once again, framing is an important thing, right? A lot of Star Trail shots are really looking up at the pole, right? And that's where you get the full circle in. And I took one of those from the house recently, and it turned out great. But I didn't want to do another one of those. So what I really did is I said, well, I know that when you have the celestial equator kind of towards the middle of the frame, that's going to be pretty much a straight line. And then your stars are going to start to curve off one way and start to curve off another. So, that also helped because it put the observatory kind of towards the center of the frame and had a little bit more going on here with everything else that was going on. So it's the same process I did in the house, just 30-second exposures, with the shutter release cable held down and, hit on the lock mode so I could walk away from it. And, other than, having to paint out the airplane trails, which you can look at my previous video on how to do that, I just kind of let it go. And one of the great things with the modes you have there is, this is either me or one of the other folks walking up to the observatory here with our red light, it captures that in the long exposures, as well as when the member here is out, messing with his scope and kind of the lighting there. And I really, love kind of that glow down there with everything going on overhead, and all of this kind of fuzziness in here is the Milky Way as it was moving across, right? And so, just a really neat image, very, very easy to take, no tracking going on here, just, point the camera in the direction. The biggest problem with this is that I kind of had to go out every 5 minutes with the hairdryer to keep dew off of the lens. And so that was what I did with the main camera. And as I said, I wanted to set myself up for success, have some things that can turn out, right? Even if my Milky Way shots were mostly junk and it was really more of a learning experience, can I have something running that's actually going to work well? And that's where my telescope shots came in. So, working, kind of not in any particular order, but I had a plan of, all right, from 10 p.m. to 4:40 a.m., I have this much time. I want to get several targets. I don't want to just focus on one, especially because the main target I wanted to look at, which we'll see a little bit later, was really only good to shoot for about 3.5 hours. So I set up different ones. So I had the Iris Nebula here at the very end of the evening, and getting all these dust clouds. This is a great target for dark sky because this just doesn't show up in the backyard, right? There's just not enough separation between this and the light pollution. The next one, I was just flabbergasted with how well this turned out, almost right out of the camera. This is the Lagoon and Trifid Nebula, and I wanted to do a framing kind of rule of thirds, so this is kind of over in this lower corner over here, and I just barely wanted to get this little star cluster in at the bottom. But the funny thing is these are the two things I was mainly concerned about, because this is what I know in the backyard. I know where the Lagoon is and the Trifid is, and I tried to take them last year, and I did the best of my ability, but they weren't very good. But I didn't think about everything else that comes out in this image in the dark sky location. And so I'm so happy that I didn't just postage stamp these, where I put the Lagoon in the dead center, the Trifid in the dead center, and that's what I was taking the picture of. Because by opening this up, the story of the picture changed for me. All of a sudden, it wasn't all about the lagoon or all about the Triffid, even though I think they came out fantastic. You know, it's really the story of what I'm calling in this shot the road to the lagoon, where you have this winding path of dark dust working all, or, you know, actually not dark dust even, but absence of these stars here, winding its way all the way to the lagoon. And the amount of stars in this shot are just staggering. As a matter of fact, when my telescope went over to start taking images of this, I think my previous video, or one of them, was on plate solving. And so I was relying on plate solving for all this. This particular image is where plate solving failed on me. The first couple of times I sent it over there, plate solving just straight up failed. And I couldn't figure out why. And then I moved it off of kind of the area that it was on. Plate solving worked fine. Tried to move it back and it failed repeatedly. And the best I can come up with is that plate solving went, "There's too many stars here, boss. I can't figure this out." And it's a dark site problem, I guess. I've never run across it before. How I solved it is I switched to my hydrogen alpha filter, which is going to block out a lot more of the light here and let only the brightest stars through. And it immediately plate solved, no problem. Yeah, I guess it's the astronomical equivalent of first world problems. I've got too many stars, so I don't know where I am. But I love how this image turned out. And then lastly, this is the one I really came out for at the beginning of the night. This is the one that I had my initial plan for. And everything else you've seen up until this was the gravy, right? That was all. Let me see if I can take other images here and there as I go. This is the one that I planned for. This is a 2-panel mosaic of the Rho Ophiuchi kind of nebula and region that's right next. This is Antares here, right off of kind of the galactic core. And I love this area for a few reasons, but mainly because of the diversity, right? You've got Antares, which is a naked eye star. You have a couple of globular clusters in here. So much reflection nebula around here and up here, dark dust lanes, and even a little bit of emission nebula down here. It's got so much color in it. It's beautiful, right? But it's more field of view than I can normally handle. So the 2-panel mosaic, it kind of split top and bottom. And I really spent about 3.5 hours on this, split relatively evenly between the top and bottom. And this was the meat and potatoes. This was the plan it out really well beforehand, make sure that Sequence Generator Pro and all of my other software and hardware is working well together, got the dew heaters running to keep the dew off of it, and let it run and kind of don't touch it. I just kind of go peek every now and again and make sure that it didn't error out on me. If I was in the backyard, I probably wouldn't be shooting this target, but any target I'd be shooting, I might really be focused on that for the night. Because if I waste that night, there isn't, it's annoying, but I have the next night coming up and I can bring the stuff right back out. But when it's the traveling out to the dark sky location, I don't get to do that often. Last time I did it was over Christmas break. And so now we're in the summer. And so, I really want to make the most of that. And that's why, even though I'm planning for this, I try to make every opportunity to get everything else that I can. And not necessarily in saying I'm going to have 5 telescopes set up, right? But bring a camera if you've got a camera, or if you've got a point and shoot, if you got just a normal tripod, right? This one wasn't star tracked at all, right? It's just a 30-second exposure on the tripod. This one I think was tracked, but it probably wouldn't have been that different if because it was just still a 30-second exposure with a very wide angle lens that I had. Same kind of thing here. Obviously, this one wasn't tracked at all, just a shutter release cable and that kind of thing. So a lot of targets of opportunity once you get out there. And then, the last thing is, make sure to look up when you're in these places. Most of us, can't stay up all night, but I made the effort on this one, right? I really pushed myself to be able to kind of enjoy it for the whole time I was out there. And I was surprised at the end of the night. I packed all my stuff up as the sun came up, and I hadn't gone to sleep yet. There was just so much to do with, working with the manual camera and kind of putting it in the right spots, every 20 or 30 minutes, that kind of thing, and just enjoying the view and talking with the other folks out there, and helping them with their problems, or they're helping me with my problems, and all that kind of good stuff. So that was my trip out to the Oklahoma dark site here a couple weeks ago. Obviously, it worked out really well for me. But even with the 6 or 7 images that I'm super proud of here, like I said, I had hundreds total, and the vast majority of them were learning experiences or test shots or kind of framing something up. And so I don't view any of that as wasted time, but obviously it can be frustrating if you come home and that's the first thing you look at. So use it as a learning experience. Use that camera as a little bit of an extension of your eyes, even if the color isn't perfect or something like that. Enjoy your time with it while you're there. And then when you get home, I think you'll find that more than you think, there's gems in there, right? There's diamonds in the rough there, and you just need to play around with them. So that's it for today. I hope that was fun, enjoyable for you guys. Hopefully gives you some encouragement to get out under dark skies if you can yourself, especially for those of us that are typically stuck under the suburbs. But until next time, I encourage everybody to go out and shoot something.